Here is a tour of my midsummer garden. This is the squash bed, and it is formerly a compost bed. So the squashes are doing really, really well. I've got some romanesco, which aren't as tasty as I was hoping. Claremore always delivers. And this is something called ortolano di Faenza, which has always been kind of on the smaller side, but they're really tasty. Over here, some dahlias, sunflowers, some feverfew, chamomile from last spring. These red dahlias I transplanted here. They're doing pretty good. The cosmos are all volunteers. This goldenrod still has not bloomed yet. And also I've got scarlet runner beans climbing along here. Now they might be kind of crowded, and I think next time I might not do scarlet runner beans crowded in amongst everything else, but it sure is pretty. Over here we have a winter squash, a sweet meat that I grew last year that I really liked, and it is on its own fresh pile of compost, and some little experimental kales that are growing really slowly in the clay. This is the remains of a romanesco, and this is interesting because this romanesco looks totally different from its mate next to it. Of course I cut it, but this is what it looked like before I cut it too. And they're both from Baker Creek seeds. And then look at this guy. Oh my God, he's so cute. Come on, focus. I don't know if you can see him in there, but he's gonna be so wonderful. Moving right along. Here's some more kale, Russian kale. That was planted at the same time as those other ones struggling in the clay, and this one doing so much better. Why? Because I had a compost pile on this plot before I planted it, even though a cauliflower also grew here, and alyssum in the early spring. Here is some broccoli that I got from Sakina's. Too bad she's going to retire this year. I'll have to start my own broccoli. Here is my little in-ground bed, which is half clay, with some Hackberry F1 turnips and yellow beets. These, gosh, aren't they gorgeous? Marigolds. Brocade mix. They have decided they love this area, which once again was a compost pile. Here are my red chieftain potatoes, which are still not finished. They've been going and going and going, so I haven't harvested them yet. This over here is a terrible example of my experimentation tendencies, because it is a rutabaga that is really not doing that well, because it's a winter vegetable and I planted it in the spring and summer. So I should try again with a different kind of spot for it. Here was my fabulous Russian banana fingerling potatoes that I got from High Mowing Seeds. And there was tons of borage around it as well that were all volunteers. This, of course, overwintered as a giant compost pile, and the potatoes just loved it. Over here, some alyssum that started out from seed. And you can see it's crowded out by, let me get better light here, another winter squash. But lo and behold, here is, can you guess? My fabulous yacon from tubers from last year. So this guy finally took off. He's looking very happy in this big redwood box. Another volunteer. Here, this is from the Fort Bragg Garden Club bee plant, which is a native. And another dahlia. And this bed just before had beets in it. The badger beets from row 7 were so good. So I took out all the beets and I am going to put something else here. This pallet is my makeshift trellis for the winter squash because he wants to climb all over everything. He's doing pretty good. Okay, moving right along. This bed used to have another winter squash in it, and I decided, really, I don't need that many. So I am doing wildflowers here. More sunflowers. These broccolis didn't do that well. They're very slow, but it's been cold, so maybe that's why. But now they're heading up a little bit. They're small little gypsy broccolis. These ones, here's some Ailsa onion. A few onions I got from Phoebe at the gardens. Hopefully they'll bulb up. It's always nice to have parsley everywhere because I use it a lot. More broccolis, and you can see that they are much leggier, I guess, than the other one. Maybe too much commercial compost. Not sure why. But they're finally heading up as well. Here is a barrel full of dahlias, mystery dahlias. Not sure what's going to happen here, but they're ready to almost bloom. It's late. It's already mid-July, and the ones at the gardens are in full bloom, and mine are barely starting, so I'm not sure why. And my pea bed with a volunteer, probably planted by the jays, sunflower that is happy as a clam in this pea bed. It had lots of support from both the compost that was in there before I planted the peas, and probably the peas themselves. This is volunteer Yarrow, who is just so happy to be carried on as a tenant in my garden, and they are just so happy. Moving right along. The warm bed has a tomato and some lettuce and some basil. This tomato, very thick stems, very leggy, probably had too much nitrogen, I imagine, unless that's just what it looks like, but it probably had too much nitrogen. Here is some fabulous lettuce from row 7 called Tegan, my favorite lettuce. Real trooper, even in the heat from the warm bed, but now that it's shadier, because the peas are so tall, I chanced planting lettuce here. And this is a Market More cucumber from Sakina. I just couldn't resist. Because my own cucumbers, look how yellow they are. Not sure why. This is probably the Baker Creek. They're in Missouri. Maybe it just never was hot enough for these Japanese cucumbers. But my Tasty Green, which I planted last year also outdoors in a pot, now these guys have a box, and they're quite doing much better than the other ones. So Baker Creek has not been good to me. I'm not going to buy seeds from them again. But Tasty Green is from Renee, as you could just get it at the supermarket practically. Here are some Dior beans, also from, I think, Renee's. And this tomato, yeah, I think it might be an early girl, but it's not doing a whole lot. These are providers. I've been eating these green beans. And this is another tomato that is doing okay outdoors. This tomato's doing okay, but it also is very thick. Probably a lot of compost there. Okay, some more Hackeray turnips. You're wondering, why do I have so many Hackeray turnips everywhere? Because I scattered so many seeds that I thought I could transplant a bunch from the main bed into other places. And you know, that's something I'm trying to get away from, is planting the same vegetable in different spots. I mean, it's good to experiment and see who does well where, but it also makes it a pain when you're harvesting the entire bed. Things don't always need the same amount of water, and also sometimes don't always ripen and fully mature at the same time. But for these lettuces, I can eat them anytime. So it doesn't matter. They could be big, they could be small. I can always eat them. So this is covered with netting for the root maggot flies. And look how happy they are. Even the basil is happier under the netting than not. I think the netting provides a tiny, tiny little bit of shade that they like. Here's another tomato. Not sure what kind of tomato this is. What does it say here? Oh, it's an early girl. Again, why is the stem so thick? Is that normal? All of my tomatoes are so thick stemmed. But at least this one doesn't have as much nitrogen toxicity as this one in the greenhouse, which is barely fruiting at all despite being started very early. The greenhouse. Oh my God, the cucumbers are so happy in here. These are all both Tasty Green and the Baker Creek variety are making a lot of happy fruits here. Look at that. Oh my God, look at these. And all sorts of little ones starting. Yeah. Oh my God, I love cucumbers. I love cucumbers, and they love me. Apparently they love what I've done for them. All right, so some more provider beans just because I had extras. I got a few beans off these guys, but oh no, they're not doing super much here. Seeds that I'm starting are purple sprouting broccoli from Field of Dreams seed project, chard from a local seed project from the Fort Bragg Library, and kale from Zal Cacodile. This is, I rescued him from certain death, and don't comment on that because it's illegal to take these out of the park. Anyway, here are some fuchsias from the Mendocino Coast Botanical Gardens. When we pruned them, I took some roots that we pruned off and I rooted them, and now there's fuchsias happening here. I'm not sure where I'm going to put them though. I don't know if they can really stay here and thrive in these small pots. But when I put them outside, they get unhappy and they start turning weird colors. So I'm not sure what to do about my fuchsias yet. Here is the hot shelf, and I put a basil up there to see if it likes it hot. All right. All right, going back to this bed, here is a volunteer anise hyssop that I'm growing out for the beneficial flowers. Some carrots interspersed with the hackery turnips, but mostly this bed is going to be my strawberry kingdom. These are all Albion strawberries, and I let most of their runners go because I want more strawberries. So I know I won't get a ton of strawberries this year, but I've gotten some. And this is some leek again from Baker Creek that is meh. It's actually got a little rust on it, but it's not terrible yet. It's very young still. I ate one of them in soup. That's probably all I'll do with these leeks. This cilantro gone to seed for the pollinators. This guy came back from last year. I guess he's a permanent resident now because I cut him way back, but didn't take him all the way out in the winter, and look how happy. Here is what I'm talking about. I stick things. I figure this broccoli will be only a temporary resident of this bed because I will eat it once it heads up. Now over here, the remains of the bolero carrots. I've been eating them. They're supposed to store well, but I've been mostly eating them. Some more fabulous Tegan lettuce. A new sage, which is super happy here. More cilantro. Look at this Clarkia. This was from seed, and I had a huge amount of Clarkia in that bed over there, but they all fell over and did not do well. So I think they had too much fertilizer for the vegetables, which tells me for some wildflowers, you want them in their own special place so they don't get too much fertilizer. If you put them in the same bed as the veggies, then Anyway, that's what I think happened to the other one. However, this bed sucks. Everything grows super slowly in here. I think it's some cheap soil, because I know it's moist down there. I know it after, beyond the top layer. It's, well, look at that. Maybe, yeah, way down there it's moist, but the top layer dries out a lot. I should give it a water. Okay. This last bed is a good bed for sunshine most of the time. A couple more Tegans. These squashes are supposed to be honeyboat delicatas. And there's a couple of dills in there, a random chard, a dwarf zinnia. This is just a willy-nilly bed. More carrots. These are corral carrots from Baker Creek. They're actually tastier than the boleros. And there was broccoli in here before, so I put more carrots to keep succession planting, and these guys have their own drip system, so they should be okay. Well, so do those guys, and they did great. And these guys are a mixture of carrots from the seed project as well as whatever else I had. Chives. These are more Ailsa Craig onions. And a dill. I love dill for my pickles, so I try and grow a lot of dill. Okay, let's look at the flowers. Let's look at the flowers. These flowers are all from the Mendocino Coast Botanical Gardens, what they call the volunteer table, where we can take things that they don't want to sell anymore. Some people call it the dead table or the foundling table. You can adopt these guys. And so I've got these hummingbird sage. This is called tequila, and it gets very large. Some free dahlias that are pretty, doing well. An anise hyssop that is in a pot. The volunteer sweet pea. These I planted, sunflowers for the birdies. More sunflowers. But these aren't doing as well because they're in that crappy geo-aggregate soil that I got. But look who likes the clay. Back here beyond the calendula is a sticky monkey flower. Yay! That's a native I got at the native plant sale, and it is happy here. I'm so happy for it too. I like the orange and the yellow and the orange. Here is another anise hyssop. This one I probably started from seed and put it there. This is cool. It's a ground cover, a native ground cover. Some string. This is something like another native pollinator plant in the mint family. And yeah, that's my garden. My garden in mid-July 2025. I'm pretty proud of it.